Today is June 14th, 2006. My name is Charles Harrell. I'm here with Mr. Mower in his home in Bowling Green, Maryland, talking about his World War II experience. Mr. Mower, for the record, would you state your full name?
Charles Theodore Mower.
And what is your current address?
12510 McMullen Highway, Cumberland, Maryland.
What is the zip code here?
21502.
Where were you born, Mr. Mower?
In Cumberland, Maryland.
And when?
Pardon?
When were you born?
January the 18th, 1924.
What branch of service did you join during World War II?
In the Signal Corps.
Were you in North Africa?
Yes, I was.
Italy and France and Germany?
Yes, I was.
What was your primary job in the United States Army?
Well, I was switchboard operator. I was a lineman. In North Africa, I was mostly a switchboard operator.
What company were you assigned to at first?
Company B, the 24th, 26th Signal Service Battalion.
Were you at a base section at one time?
Oh, no, I took my training at Fort Mammouth, New Jersey. That was a Signal Corps training center.
I'd like to drop back and talk about your life in the 1930s. Can you tell me about your parents, what their names were, what they did?
My father, died young with a heart attack during.
Did you know him?
Oh yeah. It was rough. Rough living.
What did he do for a job?
What I think what?
What did he do for a job?
He was an electrician at the Footer Dye Works. The Footer Dye Works was the biggest cleaning establishment in the country.
What was his name?
Pardon?
What was his name?
Charles M. Mower.
How about your mom? What's her name?
Pardon?
Who was your mother?
Genevieve Sherry Mower.
Did she stay at home?
Yes, she was a homemaker.
Where did you live most of your childhood?
On a city called Broadway, a street called Broadway in Cumberland.
Did your dad own the home that he lived in?
No, we rented ever since I could remember, up to the time he died.
In the 1930s, would you consider your family middle class?
More or less. We always had something to eat and never went barefooted.
Was your dad politically active?
Not really, no.
Would you characterize him to be a Republican or a Democrat?
He was Republican.
When the Great Depression hit in 1929, did your family suffer?
Well, not really. My father worked up to 1937, and they closed Footer Dye Works. And he died 6 months after they closed.
How old were you at that time?
I was around 12 years old then, or 13.
That was catastrophic for a little kid.
A little rough.
Did you have to go get a job?
No.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 6 sisters and no brothers.
So you're the boy of the house.
Yeah, I was the boy.
Were they older than you or younger?
5 older and 1 younger. I was next to the youngest.
Were they still at home when Dad passed on?
Yes. Oh, no. 2 of them was married.
How did your mother pull through the time without a dad?
Pretty good. Well, she got married later on. I had a stepfather who treated me fairly decent, believe me.
Well, what was his name?
Merle Brooks. He had a bar in Cumberland. Liquor license. He was one of the few that had a liquor license. And he, like I said, he treated me just like his son. So he had 6 children. Of course, there were 3 at home.
Were they about your age?
Paul and I was the same age, and Rita and Donnie was younger.
How'd you get along with the stepchildren, or half-children, whatever they are?
Good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hang out a lot with Paul, the one that's closest to you?
Yeah, until one day on the way to school, we were both 16. Of course, we didn't. My stepfather wasn't too free with money. If you wanted something, you had to go to work. So Paul said, "Let's quit school and go in the Army." I said, "That sounds good, kid." So we both turned our books in, come home, caught the devil from my mother. But anyway, my stepfather signed for Paul to go in the Army, but my mother wouldn't sign for me. And Paul he was in Schofield Barracks whenever the Japanese bombed. He went in 1940, 16 years old.
So he was at Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
During the attack. Tell me about your school. Is there anything particular about high school and middle school that you were really good at?
No. I didn't particularly like school, so I went, but I wasn't the best student, I guess. Anything I was taught, I learned on my own, more or less.
What did you like to do as a kid?
Pardon?
What did you like to do as a child?
Truthfully, I can't remember.
Did you have any adult mentors?
No. A bunch of course, then we used to play cowboys whenever I was a kid, 6, 7, 8 years old. And
did you have electricity in your home?
oh yeah.
Did you listen to the radio?
Yeah, I remember the first radio they had this big speaker sit on top. I think it was a Natwater Kent. I'm not too sure. That or a Philco, one of the two.
What did you listen to on the radio?
Well, I had to listen to what my older sisters listened to. Music. The big bands from the time I was a kid. I didn't get to listen to whatever, they used to have, Ralston cereal. I never got to listen to that.
Did your friends who were your age also had radios in their homes?
I think so, yeah.
In Cumberland, did you have running water?
Oh, yeah.
So did you bathe?
Yeah, we had a bathroom. Of course, I remember my grandmother had an outhouse in Cumberland. No bathroom. They had used a wash tub then.
How far were you from your grandparents?
Well, just about 2 blocks from on my mother's side.
Did you visit them a lot?
Oh, yeah.
How about your father's side, grandparents?
Well, they were, my grandparents on my father's side, like I said, they were deceased. But I had some cousins, and I'd see them maybe once every couple months or so.
Was your father in the First World War?
No, he wasn't.
Had you met any veterans of that war during the 30s?
Yeah, because whenever I was a kid, I joined the American Legion Junior Drum Corps back in mid-30s.
What did they typically do?
We had a fairly kids my age had a pretty good size drum corps. Remember, we wore white pants, and they give us, I forget what color the sweaters were, and a gray cap.
What did you do with the drum corps?
I played a bugle.
A bugle. Did you ever talk to the veterans about their war experiences?
No, I didn't. No.
Did they ever talk?
They never talked about it. A couple of the kids are parents. Their father served in World War One, but they never talked about it.
Did you listen to Franklin Roosevelt on the radio?
Not too often.
He had things called fireside chats.
Yeah, I remember when we had them.
But you didn't necessarily listen to him very often.
No. At least he tried to do something for the country, and I guess he did the best he could, considering.
He came up with a new deal with a lot of programs.
And the NRA, National Relief
Administration.
Association, I think, what they. And the CCC, I remember the CCC.
Did you know anybody who went into the CCC?
Yeah, the young boys that run around with their older brother was in the CCCs. So,
Did you ever go to the camp to see?
no.
How about the WPA, the Works Progress
I
Administration?
remember that. They did a lot of work, really. I think the WPA is the one that built the stadium up at Fort Hill. I'm pretty sure that's who did it.
The international situation around the world was heating up in the late 30s. Hitler was taking over Europe piece by piece. Did you hear anything about that at that time?
Well, I remember, the newsreel and they have him up there, shaking his head and his finger. I can remember that.
How about the Japanese?
I didn't know anything about the Japanese till they bombed Pearl Harbor, and I didn't know where in the hell Pearl Harbor was.
Where were you when you heard the news of Pearl Harbor?
Well, we used to go to a dance on Sunday, and it was Sunday evening. He said the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I had an older friend. He was in the Air Force. He was at Bowling Air Force Base, and he was home. And I said, I wanted. I was 17 then. I wanted to enlist, and my mother wouldn't sign for me then. And of course, later on, she did. But
were you extremely angry at the Japanese?
Oh yeah, I was like everyone else.
Did you ever see a Japanese American or a Japanese before that time?
No.
Were there any Chinese?
They all looked alike to me. The Chinese and the Japanese, I couldn't tell one from the other, truthfully.
Were there any those type of people
We
in
didn't
Cumberland?
have them in Cumberland then.
How about black people? Were there black people in Cumberland?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good black people. Of course, there's bad in blacks and there's bad in whites.
Did you how did you feel at that time about the race relations in Cumberland?
Well, we never had any problem, really. I never given it a second thought. Back, talking about in the 30s, and they went their way and we went ours. I remember used to go to the Garden Theater, which was on North Mechanic Street, on Saturday, and the blacks had their bar and everything where they all congregated, and
Did you spend time at your stepfather's bar?
No.
Was he the type of person not to let any young kid in?
Well, I was a kid yet,
Yeah.
and that was for the older men.
Can you recall the first job you got?
Yeah.
Where was it?
Selling these.
What did you do there?
Employed a heck of a lot of people from Cumberland. Yeah, I got in called warp knitting, where they knitting machines, knitted the fabric. You get paid piecework. I made good money for a kid. Back then, I was making $40, $45, $50 a week.
You mentioned you had dropped out of school. Did you go back?
No, whenever I dropped out of school, that's what I was making, which was a heck of a lot of money then. Then you could buy a good suit for $25.
Did your stepfather need the money?
No, I never paid money at all to stay at home. They fed me, and like I said, I took care of my own clothing. And
what grade were you in when you dropped out?
I was in the 9th grade.
As after Pearl Harbor, there was a big rush to try to get people to join, and people wanted to join.
People wanted to join.
But your mother wouldn't sign for you.
No.
Did you and your mother have a relationship where you yelled at each other because you didn't get what you wanted?
No, not really. She just worried. She was a worrier.
How about your older sisters, the ones that were married? Did their husbands enlist?
No. None of them was in the service.
You enlisted pretty early as the war went along. Had you... You mentioned you enlisted in September of 1942, less than 9 months after the war.
I was 18 years old.
Is that why? Is it because you were waiting until you're 18?
No, I was 18 in January, and that's when my mother... I finally convinced her to sign for me. I said, if I have to lie at my age, I'm going to. And she finally consented to sign the papers for me to go.
Where did you have to report?
Well, I enlisted, was a recruiter in Cumberland, and I reported to Baltimore, and then from Baltimore they shipped me to Camp Lee, Virginia. In Camp Lee, Virginia, was shipped up to Fort Mammouth, New Jersey.
Tell me about your first day in boot camp.
Well, I really can't remember too much about it. It was different than what I thought it would be.
Was that at Camp Lee?
Oh, Camp Lee, we didn't do nothing. They showed us how to make our bed. And that was the extent of my learning at first day at Camp Lee, and was only there for the weekend, more or less.
Was boot camp at Mammouth?
Yes. Up at Segirt, New Jersey, which was a National Guard camp back before World War II. Well, that's where we took 4 weeks training there before we went up to the main fort.
Were you physically fit at the time?
Yes.
So the physical training was no problem for you?
No problem.
Had you played any sports before that?
No. Mm-mm. But I was a smoker.
But not a drinker because you weren't old enough.
No, I didn't drink then. Coca-Cola.
Out of all the weapons you used in training, which fit you most? Which was your favorite?
Well, I remember firing, in the range of the 03. That was the first gun I ever fired.
So you weren't a hunter beforehand?
No.
How about a fisher?
Never owned a gun.
As you went to training, what made you get into the signal battalion?
I don't know. I was debating when the Signal Corps or the artillery, and I decided on the Signal Corps.
Not for any particular reason?
Not for any particular reason. Of course, I didn't know anything about it, you know.
Did you really have a choice?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
You weren't registered for the draft because you were too young.
Well, we registered, but they weren't drafting 18-year-olds then. Yeah, whenever we became 18, we had to sign up for the draft.
How hard was your training when it came to the
Physical?
signal? No, the Signal Corps.
It was. I didn't mind it really. It wasn't, to me. It wasn't anything hard. I think it was a lot different than what it is today. It must be pretty rough for the young boys who get in today.
What did you learn in your training?
Well, I learned how to climb a pole. Well, they taught us how to climb a pole, how to operate a switchboard, and how to hook up a phone. And, of course, then they had what they call the EE8A, the old magnetic phone you cranked.
Did you have to repair that stuff too?
No.
Just operate?
It was in a leather case. And came and he pulled out the receiver and transmitter and talked over it, and the magnet, of course, was for ringing.
Did you keep in touch with home?
Well, I did while I was in New Jersey, but once I went overseas, I'd write letters, at least once a week, and let them know how I was doing. And
did you use the V-mail?
Yeah, I remember using it in one sheet. I write real large so I wouldn't have to write too much. Because really you didn't know what the heck to write about. It was the same routine every day.
Tell me about where you, when you got on the boat to head overseas. Do you remember when you did that?
Oh, yeah. We left from Norfolk, Virginia. Then we were 2 weeks going over. I remember we had one fella, a kid, stand out on deck all night looking for the Prudential advertisement on the Rock of Gibraltar. I'm not lying. We had him snowed, there would be a Prudential sign on the rock.
Did you go directly to Algiers?
Went directly to Oran. Well, landed at a place called Mirs Al Kabir. It was the name of where the ship's tied up. And that's where they sunk the French cruiser. Of course, Vichy France was the ones that fought the GIs going into North Africa.
Were you involved with Operation Torch?
No, that was before I arrived.
Do you remember the name of the boat that you sailed across the ocean with?
Elizabeth Stanton. It was sunk in Italy.
By enemy attack?
Pardon?
By the enemy?
With Germans, whenever they invaded Italy.
When did you get into North Africa?
In early 1943. And like I said, I was stationed in a city called Oran.
And did you stay in that city the entire
I
time?
stayed that the whole time.
What was your job in Oran?
Well, I started off as a switchboard operator. Then in July of '43, they brought over the wax. And they took over all the switchboard operating office stuff like that.
Was that a cushy job?
Hmm?
Was it a cushy job being a switchboard operator?
I'd say it was pretty easy. And I went down to, I was in the hotel. I forget the name of the hotel, but all the, from Major on up stayed there. In fact, Teddy Roosevelt Jr., I used to see him quite often. He stayed there. That's before he left to go back to England. They didn't want him to go back. The officers didn't. But he insisted he wanted to go back to his old regiment or in the 4th Infantry Division.
Were you armed with a pistol or a rifle during this time?
Well, in North Africa, we were given Tommy guns then, but never used it. And then whenever I went to Italy, and then they come out with the carbine. That's what I was.
In North Africa, did you have to walk around with this Tommy gun the entire time?
No. Like I said, I was just like being in the city. Oran was quite large. Like I said, it was the second largest city in Algiers.
What type of uniform did you wear in North
I
Africa?
wore khaki.
Did you ever have a dress uniform you had with you in North Africa?
No.
How did you like the native people of North Africa?
You know, the Arabs I didn't think a heck of a lot of. But I remember whenever we landed, you know, cigarettes, we had our weapons belt. We put the packs of cigarettes in the weapon belt, and little Arab kids knew where they kept them, and they'd come up and steal off of it. Then run like hell.
How was your food in North Africa?
Well, whenever I first went there, before I joined one of the replacement, called Canistel Replacement Depot. Food, never ate so damn much spam and powder. Well, in the morning, you get powdered eggs and spam cut up in it. At lunchtime, you get a cold spam sandwich or marmalade, orange marmalade with peanut butter. At supper time, you get a fried spam with whatever. I got so darn eating. Hey, I hated spam.
Did the natives have that type of food?
You know, I don't know what. No, I don't know what they ate. I'll be honest about it. I know. I sold mattress cover. I got $50 for it. A white, you know, what we used to call your death bag. And fit over a mattress, and those Arab, where they got the money, but they'd buy any of that stuff. Buy, you know.
Where did you stay? Where did you sleep?
We had a regular camp, real nice camp. Was out of the city of Oran, just a couple miles out by Lassigny Airport, which was there in that part of Algeria.
So each day you would drive into Algiers?
We would drive into town. Then whenever we went, after the North African campaign, we'd go in town every day, more or less. We wasn't working, and just hang out. They had a place called American Bar, and they made beer, but it was, if you want to call it beer, it was lousy. And of course, I was never any beer drinker. And then they had wine and had bars where you go drink wine.
How about the women?
Well, you might think I'm lying. Whenever I went to North Africa, we had houses of prostitution on limits.
What do you mean?
Whorehouses. You go there and it costs 50 francs, which was $1. Got anything you want. Whenever you went in, we had a name for the street. Whenever you went in, there was an MP at the beginning of the street. He'd give you a chit, and if you went in for sex, before you get out, you had to go into a pro station and have a pro. We never had any VD. So whenever they brought the wax over, they put everything off limits. And I don't give a damn, fellas is going to go out for a good time, maybe their last time. And that's when the VD started.
The wax that came over, did you meet them and train them on how
No, they, a lot of them were switchboard operators, for the telephone company before they joined the wax, and they were all different kind.
Did you make any friends while you were in Oran?
Oh, yeah. One fella, he was a tech sergeant in the MP company. He knew me, but I didn't know him. Here he lived at the bottom of Broadway, but he went in the Army in 1939. He was, like I said, he was in the regular Army. And I was going into the building, and he yelled, "Hey, Cumberland." I looked up, he said, "I'll see you later." And he and I palled around together the whole time I was there, and then he got killed after the war in Lyon, France, a Jeep accident. He was a first sergeant.
How did you get into town? Did you ride a Jeep into town?
No, we had just got on the 6x6 regular truck and rode in the back.
Did you have a driver's license? For a military driver's license?
I never had a driver's license until I come back from the Army. I used to drive my stepfather's car. See, I come home before the war was over on rotation. I drove all around without a license for the whole time. He gave me the key to his car and said, "Go out and have a good time." Well, I did.
Did you see any German prisoners?
No, but we had Italian prisoners there that they did all the KP and everything. We didn't have to do any KP.
What was their attitude?
I don't know, really. I had no use for the Germans, Of course, I was one of many.
How long did you stay in Oran?
I didn't leave there till 1944. Left there and went to a place called Anzio, joined the 57th Signal Battalion as a casual.
When you say casual, what does that mean?
That means a replacement. They lost a lot of fellows on Anzio.
Was the port already taken by the time you showed up?
Pardon?
At Anzio, when you landed at Anzio, was it already taken by the American troops?
Oh, yeah, that was established. It was there for months. Whenever they invaded Anzio, they was going to cut off Cassina. And, another one of the screw-ups. They got up as far as Rome and pulled back. The mountains all around the Germans, so they pulled back, so the Germans just set up on the mountains, set their artillery and everything up, and they shot shelled the hell out of us.
Were you there during the shelling?
I was scared.
Did they shell the...
Huh?
You weren't there when the shelling was happening?
Oh, yeah.
You were?
I was scared, like everyone else.
Was there any time at Anzio that there was a very close call for you?
Well, one night they picked out, the Germans would pick out different areas to shell, and they picked out our area one night. We had a few casualties that night.
How close did the bombardment come to you physically?
Well, I was in a hole, so I really wasn't that close. So I survived it. But we used to lose a vehicle whenever we go up to lay wire up on what they called the canal. The Germans would see us, and they shelled when they got the vehicle.
How long were you under attack at one before the Germans pulled back, so they were no longer a threat?
Well, see, whenever we left there, we went right in Rome. We kept on going. Went north of Rome, and they cut off. See, the Germans used to use a railway gun to shell, and as long as you heard that going over, you wasn't going to get hit with it, because it just sounded like a freight train. Whenever they put on their brakes out would squeal. That's why that damn shell from that railway gun sounded going over.
Did you stay with the front line as it moved forward?
Well, everyone was on the front line then. I don't care. But once we got out of Anzio, it was all right.
Did you go into Rome yourself?
Oh, we was pulled off we got north of Rome, and we was pulled off the line, and we come back and we stayed in Italian barracks right below the Coliseum, maybe half a mile down the road from the Coliseum. But we was there for 2 weeks, going to Rome every day, and never, went by the Coliseum. I never stopped to look at it. Just kept on going. Why? I remember they had a thing of I can't think of the king's name. It was enormous and had all kinds of decorations up on the top. It was marble. And like I said, I was in the Vatican.
And still, you had not seen a single German, is that true? Or plenty of attacks?
Dead ones is all.
What was your impression of your first dead German you came across?
Well, of course, then, whenever I went to France and then to Germany, well, we then the city I was in, they made the Germans turn in any cameras or firearms or whatever. And old dummy me, they were beautiful hunting rifles. I could have picked up one. You know what I picked up? A German ACFA camera. Of all things, I could have had some beautiful shotguns, all engraved and everything. Remember, we blew a safe, and there was a lot of stick pins. I'm not sure, but I believe we had diamond in them. None of us took them.
Was there a fair amount of looting going on by the army, our army?
No.
Not that you saw. You got pulled off the line and you stayed in Rome for a couple of weeks. Were you operating a switchboard again?
No, we did nothing. We was pulled off the line, and we stayed in Rome for 2 weeks. Then we come on back to Naples. we didn't know that we was going to go into southern France.
When Rome was captured, the very next day, D-Day in Normandy happened.
Well, I was in Rome whenever they invaded France. That's where I first heard about the invasion. We just pulled off and was in Rome then.
How did it make you feel not to be on the front lines of France?
Oh, well, being in Rome was great.
Did you want to be on the front lines?
No way. Mm-mm. See, I was in Corps. In other words, I was between the division and Corps and then Army. We operated the switchboard from Corps. We the divisions were attached to the Corps, and we, relayed
The messages. Where did you go after you left Naples?
in the southern France.
Were you on the invasion at that time?
August the 15th, 1944.
Did you land at Marseille?
No, we landed at a place called St. Maxine.
Were you on a landing craft at that time?
Yeah, we went in on a LST. And remember in the fields, the Germans had poles all set up, to keep the air troops from coming in. But we didn't. We come up right through southern France, no problem at all.
What was your impression of the Italians in Italy versus the French in southern France?
Well, northern Italy, Rome, they're altogether different than the southern. They became, lighter in complexion and cleaner. I said about the Italians and down around the southern part, they were just as dirty as the Arabs. That's a heck of a thing to say. But
how about the French?
the French were fairly clean. What I met now, we in a place called Lons-le-Saunière. We stayed with bivouacked there overnight, and was walking around, and there was a young French girl, nice looking. I said, "Bonjour." She said, "Just fine, thank you," in English. I didn't know. It kind of struck me. And we get talking. She took me home introduced me to her parents, and they fed me dinner, real nice. She gave me a picture of herself and wrote on the back of it, souvenir to one of my many friends, Pamela Gare, during this war, and signed her name. Claudie Teeny, I never will forget it. But she was really the only one I ever really talked to.
Here you are in southern France. You'd gone through North Africa, Italy, and you still have not seen a live German?
Still hadn't seen, like I said, I've seen dead ones that, been killed by the artillery or the infantry. So I wasn't right on the line.
In southern France, did you get bombarded like you did on Anzio?
No.
How long did you stay in southern France before the army started
Well, we
moving?
just landed. They pushed up. We come up through the Alps and a city called Grenoble, and they whipped us through there, and we bypassed Lyon, France, or Lines, however you want to pronounce it, and went up that way to what's called the Belfort Gap. And we get up there, and they pulled us back, and we come around, and we ended up in the Saar.
Saar Valley?
Saarbroken and the Saaralby and
Again, you were still lineman,
yeah.
putting up telephone.
Well, I was pulled out. They sent most of us that joined in Italy back to the Repo Depot in France, and I went with the 92nd Signal Battalion, which they came over after the invasion of France. And most of us fellows, had been over. So that's how I left. Got to Worms, Germany, and the company commander said, "You want to be promoted to corporal or you want to go home?" Well, you can imagine what my answer was. So I left from Germany, Worms, Germany, and come back.
Was that before the surrender?
Before the war was over, yeah. So I was home whenever the war ended in Europe.
In May of 45?
Mm-hmm.
You recall when you got back to the States?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall when you got back to the States?
Yeah, it was in March of 45.
Can you tell me about what role you played during the Battle of the Bulge in December?
Well, we were. I was down in the 7th Army, and we didn't have anything. We were told to be on the lookout for Germans with American uniforms, and of course, they caught them. They didn't fool around. They shot them.
Again, you still hadn't seen a German.
No,
A
still
live
hadn't
German.
seen one. I didn't see any Germans, live ones, until I got into Germany. Whenever we crossed the line and pushed up.
At Anzio was the closest you got to frontline combat?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Everyone was on the front line there, too. If you were the infantry or whatever.
Was that a month for you? About a month?
They was there for several months.
How about you?
I was only there for about a month.
In April 1945, Franklin Roosevelt dies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall that day?
Yes, I did.
Where were you?
I was home.
Here in Cumberland?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that our war aims is going to change?
Well, I was kind of upset. Well, I guess like the rest of it, kind of lost. Well, what now?
You could have been sent to fight the Japs.
Hey, don't worry. That's where my butt was on the way to. I come back and I was supposed to go back over and rejoin the company I was in, but that was canceled. Once the war was over in Germany, and was sent us down. Went back to Fort Meade, and they sent us down to Camp Buckner, North Carolina, and show you how they worked it. They called me in one day. I was down there for quite a few weeks. Said, how about being in the MPs down here? I said, no way. So they didn't say any more and wants us to turn it down. A couple of days later they said, would you be interested in being in the MP in Baltimore, Maryland? I jumped at it. I'll show you how they conned us. Being close to home, I come back to Baltimore, and the camp was down in Dundalk, down next to the old city airport. First thing you know, they put us on a train, the whole battalion, moved us, the war ended, sent to the West Coast. I had the points to get out of the Army. They wouldn't let me out. They was being shipped to Japan. Well, I get out there, and I get discharged from Oakland Regional Hospital in Oakland, California, and I could have been discharged in Fort Meade, Maryland. The rest of the battalion, what the fellows hadn't been overseas, they went to Japan.
Did you ever, in your time of service, see any USO shows?
Any what?
Shows, for soldier shows.
Oh, yeah. I forget the fellow's name. He used to play the accordion on, I don't know, Jack Benny or, I can't think of the other ones.
Did you buy any war bonds during the war?
No.
What did you do with your money?
I sent most of my money home. And I spent it once I got home.
Did you carry anything for good luck?
Well, my mother was Catholic, and she sent me a medal to carry, and I carried it. And my cousin sent me a Bible whenever I was in North Africa, and I kept it. In fact, I still have it.
Do you think that the war affected you?
In one way, yes. In another way, no.
How?
Well, my nerves aren't as good as they should be. I get upset real quick.
Do you have nightmares about the war?
Not really.
Did you marry after the war?
Yeah. Married and got a divorce. Young, 21 years old.
Did you know her before you went away?
No.
Your service in the military was mostly overseas, and except for about a month, you were always behind the line. Did your service change the way you saw the United States Army or the military in general?
Well, the Army game, make 10 copies and throw 9 away.
Did you see a lot of waste?
Oh, yeah.
How did your service affect your later life?
Well, it really helped me. Like I said, I can be fortunate. I did learn how to climb a darn pole. So it really helped me. I can't say too much there.
Did you take advantage of the GI Bill after the war?
No, I didn't. No.
Did you ever go back to school?
No. I took courses, math courses and English courses, but I don't know why. Just through the telephone company, you could take courses, and I'd take them.
Did you join the American Legion or the VFW?
Yeah, I joined and I dropped out for years, and I rejoined about a year ago. But I don't drink, so and whenever I joined, then I would bend my elbow.
Do you have you ever attended a reunion of the people in the signal company you were with?
No.
Had you ever talked to any people you have served with since?
No. I was seen in the VFW magazine years ago, where the 92nd Signal Battalion was having a reunion. That's the last company or battalion I was in overseas, and I forget where it was out in the Midwest, but I never bothered going.
How do you see your war as different from Korea or Vietnam or even Iraq today?
It's altogether different. Then we knew what we was fighting for. Today, these kids don't know what the hell they're fighting for. It's all money today.
But back in your day?
That's my own personal opinion.
In your day, what did you think it was for?
For our livelihood, our life, back in the war, back in World War II.
I'd like to thank you for giving me this interview today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not really.
If I were to say my son was standing here right now, 12 years old, infatuated with the military, what would be your advice to him about joining the military?
It's fine if you like it. You can't beat it. You get a decent retirement, and you get an education. I don't know. I have a couple of friends that made the military their life, and they made out real well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mower.